My name is Kayla Ireland. Welcome to the Inside Scoop of Living with Cerebral Palsy, an extension of the Silver Speech Speaking series. This is a talk show about spreading awareness about this common disability.
Thanks so much, Kayla. Keep it going.
March Madness is here for the Inside Scoop of Living with CP. It's National CP Awareness Month. Today on our show, we have Dr. Ward, a knowledgeable, funny, and thorough pediatrician. He began practicing medicine in 1986, where he completed a combination of both civilian and military pediatric residency. He worked 3 years in the United States Air Force at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina.
Wow, that's a nice background. How long have you been in Bristol?
Since let me think, 89, since 89. So the Air Force paid for medical school. I went to medical school in Albany Med in upstate New York. And then at the time, it was one of the most expensive schools in the country. The number is not as high as it is now, but it was an expensive school. So I am the oldest of 6 kids, and my dad is not a doctor. My dad was a New York City policeman for 21 years and then continued to work because he had to, keep the roof over the house and over our heads. And I joined the Air Force after my first year. They pay for school, the tuition, the books, they give you a stipend. But in the contract, like all military contracts, they want you to apply for their residencies. So I tried to, you could write a letter and try to get out of that. I wanted to go to Boston. They're like, no, we like you too much, Tom, which they did. I had to do a rotation in Ohio, in a place, Dayton, Ohio, Fairborn, Ohio, just outside of Dayton. And the Air Force has a civilian military residency there in pediatrics. So it's a joined program. And at the time, I should say then, it was at the Children's Hospital, Dayton Children's Hospital, which is a lot like our own Connecticut Children's Hospital. And it also worked at the Air Force Base Medical Center, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Medical Center, which is a huge hospital and has a lot of babies. So our experience with having the delivery room experience and dealing with the babies really came from the military hospital, and then our intensive care stuff experience, I should say, with the babies was at the Children's Hospital. So anyway, after doing 3 years at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio, I then went to Seymour Johnson in North Carolina, which was it's a fighter base, Kayla, like F-4s, which is a fighter, and then it converted to F-15. So I was dealing with people, a great group of people, but I was dealing with people who, like, if they had to go, they were the ones to go to war or to battle or whatever. So it was a very high intensity base. It was actually very exciting. Kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Top Gun. It's kind of like that. Yeah, you'll have to watch Top Gun. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, I did 3 years there. And then my wife and I both are from the New York area, but a lot of her family moved to Boston, the Boston area, and they're still there. So we decided that we wanted to be somewhere between New York and Boston. So we looked through Connecticut. I actually looked up in New Hampshire. I looked over New Jersey, and this was a nice setting. It was halfway between the two, 2 hours either way. And to be honest with you, I really liked Bristol. I liked Bristol because it was a very family-oriented, and I liked the, just the setting. So Dr. Brownstein, who was in practice then, was looking for 2 new pediatricians. And in the old days, there were no computers. There were just like ads that you put in a professional journal. And we connected that way, and the rest is history. So I've been in practice there. I'm sorry?
He was my pediatrician.
Dr. Brownstein. So then you were in our practice. Yeah, then you were in our practice. I probably took care of you. Yeah. So Dr. Brownstein, myself, and Dr. Knox, Hertzler Knox. And so I've been there for 32 years. Yeah, I've been there 32 years. Yeah. Dr. Brownstein has since retired. He retired 2 years ago.
I remember that name too. Yeah.
2 years ago.
Well, being in my mid-40s, I would think he would.
Yeah. No. Yeah. He retired. So I raised my 3 children here. don't live here anymore. One lives in Florida, one lives in New York on Long Island, and the other, my daughter, lives in Boston. So we're forever going in every which way. Yeah. So that's where the Air Force, and I'll be honest with you, it was probably the best thing I ever did, because one of the things I always say is New Yorkers, we kind of have tunnel vision. We think New York is the end all and be all, meaning like it's the most important thing in life and in the world. And you find out that there are very smart people outside of New York City. So that was good for me. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Kayla.
Where did you grow up in Manhattan, or where did you?
No. I grew up on Long Island. My dad was a New York City policeman. I went to college at St. John's University, which is in New York City itself. And you can imagine my dad was a New York City policeman. So he was always bringing us into the city and teaching us about the city. And I think secretly he wanted one of us to become a policeman. And my only problem with becoming a policeman was I was not one who wanted a gun pointed in my face, but I wanted to help people. So that's really why. And I love science. And that's why I became a doctor. That's really how it all started. One of my brothers was in the FBI for 5 years, and then I had two brothers were in the fire department. So I had two other brothers who were in the military as well, Marines and the Air Force. So anyway, big family in a small house, and yeah.
Well, we're lucky. Bristol is lucky to have you. So
yeah.
Very lucky. All right, keep it going, Kay.
Keep going, Kay.
I had the pleasure of having Dr. Ward as my pediatrician. I owe this man my precious life, as he happened to be the physician who performed CPR on me to get me to take my first life breath at birth, which was on September 25th, 1998.
Wow.
Well, Kayla, it's very humbling when you say that, because, I'm just one of the people who have helped in that situation. But, that was when we were when we had to deliver, or had to cover, I should say, be there for the obstetricians. For babies, we would be on call. So it was frequently we had to go to the delivery room, go to the hospital to help out with babies. And it could be 2:00 in the morning. What time were you born? Do you know, Kayla, what time in the morning or the day? I think it was in the morning. You know?
(6:58 p.m.)
Okay. So 6:58, because all of my, to be honest with you, it just, some of the toughest ones were in the morning, at 3:00 in the morning, when there's snow on the ground and you get called by your obstetrician colleague who's like, "Oh, Tom, can you come in for a baby?" And we would come in. So 6:15 in the morning, 6:15 at night, that's not too bad. That wasn't too bad. But like I said, you're humbling me by saying that I saved your life, because there was, that a lot of people helped in that regard. But thank you for that statement.
Kayla, that's why you're a night owl, huh? 8 p.m. at night.
Oh, are you up late at night, Kay? Oh my God.
Perfect timing to enter the world.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Yeah. So just to get a little, so we don't cover the delivery room anymore. We don't go to the delivery room anymore because now they have pediatricians in the hospital. They're called hospitalists, and they're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, but in those days, the standard of care was you could have a pediatrician come into the hospital from the outside. So that was a lot of our day. So a lot of times, Kayla, when you may have been in the office, right? And we could get a call. We could have a waiting room full of kids, probably you as well, with Dr. Brownstein. And we got called out and we were out the door because we had to be there for a baby. So that was, we don't miss it because it does that kind of disruptive kind of stuff. But it to be honest with you, it did allow us to establish a nice relationship like I had with you and the family, because you were there at the time of the delivery, and it really makes a difference. And then of course, working with our obstetricians made a big difference too. So we do miss that part, but we don't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and fight the snow to get to the hospital. There was many a night that the obstetrician would call me and ask me to stay in the hospital. The baby wasn't born yet, but I had to sleep there because they were worried about a premature birth, and we would stay there and, be there for the baby.
Wow, that's excellent information.
Yeah.
To see how medicine is changing too.
It is changing, yes.
Yeah. You're up, Kay.
I have a variety of specialists, mainly neurology and orthopedics, and therapists. You were there for me. Each and every milestone. It was always a big celebration to me and my family when I achieved what it is I put my mind to. My math and horse interests, inquiries about neurology, and most importantly, your bedside manner. Approachable. Spoke to me, not my adult. Thank you, Dr. Ward and staff, for always having the proper paperwork to submit to deal with the red tape of all the insurance companies.
Well, you know that there's always paperwork. And thank you for thanking me, because even now with all the computers, maybe you can work on that, Kayla. All the computer stuff, we still have so much paperwork, and it's just amazing. Even with the schools, even with the schools.
In the office, and I deal with the insurance companies every day for authorizations, and it's terrible. You would think it would be better, but it's.
I mean, Kayla, it is getting better, but like if especially with the insurance companies, or if you needed, let's say you needed some special equipment. Oh my gosh, it's just like a nightmare. The form you have to fill out, how many pages, and to be honest with you, it's never geared towards kids. It's always geared towards adults. So you have to first get over that hurdle to explain on the thing that, no, this is a 5-year-old little girl who needs this, and this is what we're writing for. So, but it is getting better. I have to say it is getting better, but it's still, there's paperwork. There's paperwork, Kay. But that's my job, Kay. That's my job, Kayla. That's my job.
Even for the wheelchairs after so long.
Yeah. Wheelchairs. Oh gosh, you name it. Oh yeah. It's just amazing. And you may have sent the same thing to the insurance company just a month ago, but you gotta fill it out again. Like, guys, don't you know this stuff? Yeah. But it is getting better. But again, that's my job. So and you need it. And you needed it, and you were better for it. So that's the name of our game. That's the name. That's what pediatricians do. Yeah.
For example, like Marcy, my speech language pathologist, here with me today, Dr. Ward also saw me unleash my cognitive abilities.
Yeah. What I'm intrigued with is the computer you're working with now, because when the place where I trained again at Dayton Children's Hospital, and it was a lot like Newington Children's, which became Connecticut Children's. So it was a rehabilitation hospital, a lot for kids with CP or all of the disabilities. And we had it developed just like Connecticut Children's has.
That's where
What's that?
That's where I went. I had Dr. Banta.
Yeah.
Dr.
And
Banta.
yeah. And so, what was I going to say? No. So we had a couple of kids in the ICU who, and I can't remember why they were there, but they had a transection of their spinal cord. So they needed to use a machine similar, a computer. In those days, it wasn't a computer. It was probably a word board. But there was something that the one young girl had with a keyboard that I think was just experimental. Connecticut, I should say, Dayton Children's Hospital is affiliated with Wright State University. And there's a whole department of research there. You can go look this one up. They had a professor there when I was there, and I don't know if he's still there, who was trying to help this one young woman who was paralyzed from the waist down to get her to walk. And he was using the computer technology at the time. And that just shows you like where the guidance came from for those kind of assisted devices like you have right now. I think that's amazing what you're using right now. That's so great, because then we can tap into your brain and know how smart you are, and your sense of humor too. I always enjoyed that, Kayla. Always. Always.
Yeah, the technology is definitely changing rapidly, which is amazing. I mean, when I first started working with Kayla, we ordered this device, and it was break down all the time. Right. It would freeze, and we'd all be frustrated. And then we reconnected, and I can't believe the technology, Kayla, you're using. And then we also connected with a researcher, a scientist who's going to be on our show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, who's working on voices, like getting the right voice for the client. So there's so much out there. So it's really, thank you for that information. Maybe we can look him up too and figure out,
Kate, you have to tell me or send me an email as to when that researcher is going to be on your YouTube channel, because I'd love to hear the story. And, yes.
Dr. Ward, I will always remember you as patient, understanding, and funny. Dr. Ward's bedside manner is to be recognized.
Well, I guess thank you for saying that, but I just try to be comfortable with the patients, try to explain everything to the patient and to the family. That's so important, and I always want to make sure that the patient, no matter what age they are, that they're helped, but also that if they are able to understand, meaning like they can talk or express themselves in some way, communicate in some way, that they understand. And that's why in your situation, I was always worried that I was missing something. That did I get everything, that answer everything that you had questions about? I always worried about that.
How many CP patients do you have?
Kayla asked me that, gave me a little heads up on that. Probably not a lot, to be honest with you, but probably maybe 4 or 5, that are doing very well. Probably 4 or 5. Maybe in the whole practice, yeah. But not that I'm an expert in the field, but I think that.
There's not many, believe me. I went from time I was 18 till 43 with no care, because I aged out of Newington Children's Hospital, and then nobody. And then I ended up at Weinberg Cerebral Palsy Center in the city. And then my doctor retired, now spreading awareness in China.
Oh, wow.
And they recruited Dr. Selber that came from Australia. Now he just left and went to HSS.
Wow.
So I followed him there, and he'd be on Wednesday night's podcast.
Oh, wow.
So he's coming to the show too.
So now, when you said Weinberger in the city, did you mean Hartford or did you mean New York?
New York City. I live in Danbury, Connecticut. I don't live in Bristol anymore.
Okay.
It was really tough when you age out.
Right.
and even like with a primary care doctor, I've always had a problem. People say, "Oh, you have CP." They like think you have some type of disease. They're scared of you.
I know.
You know,
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, I have went to medical school with a guy who had mild CP, and he became a psychiatrist. And, so, I mean, that was not my first experience. I grew up with a couple of kids who had that. It wasn't a big deal. But I think pediatricians in general, I thought, I maybe I assumed too much, should be comfortable with people who have cerebral palsy. But you absolutely are right. I find with any child who's leaving our practice, person who's leaving our practice for any disability, or for CP, for autism, for ADHD, for all kinds of different things, I find it very difficult to find an internist or an adult doctor who I can say, oh yeah, go to this guy, go to Joe, go to Charlie, and they feel comfortable. And I don't understand why, but it would be nice to have some kind of directory, some kind of way of saying, oh yeah, this is a good place to go to for this or that. Yeah.
Because they don't touch on it enough in medical school.
Right.
Like there was a medical student following Dr. Selber, and I asked him, he actually has been shadowing him because he's intrigued by it, but he said it's 1 4-hour lecture and that's it.
Right. That's probably about it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not to make excuses, but there's a information explosion, and it's so difficult to stay on top of any field because there's so much stuff coming at you every day. I have become like, I should say, or I've attracted, maybe is the better word, the doctor who takes care of kids with autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, kind of like a developmental stuff. Kayla was cerebral palsy, but I didn't originate that. I mean, I didn't decide, I wanted to do this. It just became that area that I should say, to be honest with you, was interested in, wanted to help people with, and didn't realize that there was such a need, so it's very, very interesting. So just to keep up in those fields is a challenge in itself. Yeah, it's really a challenge in itself. So that's why I always feel like if the patient, like Kayla or her mom, knows something, I want to know about it. Like we shouldn't be like, we have to act as a team, not like as I'm supposed to know everything. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I asked the Weinberger, where is that? And
New York City.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of it.
White Plains.
White Plains. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. I think that this is a really, this has not only raised awareness, but there are things that we can do to help the communication for parents. Oh, this doctor, does a good job with this. And this is, a nice directory globally, or even, not just locally, but, I work in New York City. So it's nice to know, like Katrina's like, you have to email my doctor. He's the best in CP. I had no idea either. So, we're learning so much through the internet and through talking to people and pediatricians. I mean, when you find a good pediatrician, you want to hold on to that for dear life, So, thank you for, I run into that as a speech therapist, calling the pediatrician and saying, hey, what's happening with, this child, and, making them more aware of, and them listening to me and making the next recommendation for speech and language. Absolutely. And parents will say like, oh, well, the pediatrician didn't say anything. And I'm like, well, they don't specialize in speech and language. So they need me to explain, why, these words mean this, and, it's not how many words, it's how they're saying the words. But the pediatricians, they don't need to know that. They have to know so many other things. So it's a learning curve for all of us, for sure.
Well, I mean, just to give you, I don't want to get too carried away, but just to give you some understanding, when I was in training, it's 3 years, 36 months, and we probably spent, what do you think? 6 months, maybe even 8 months in the neonatal intensive care unit. Okay. Now, so that gives us delivery room experience, which helped out Kay. But right now, I don't use that all that much, So I had 6 months, 8 months of training, whereas, maybe one of that month could have been in rehab medicine. We also did like an emergency room rotation. We did a intensive care rotation. So there's a lot of, and now it's changed. They don't get that kind of 6 months of neonatal experience. I would say that if I was designing a residency in pediatrics, that they should get areas in the rehabilitative sciences or areas of medicine, and also psychiatry, developmental, because it's such a huge thing that I think that pediatricians, need, and at least today in the year 2022. So, but I think, like when I grew up in medicine, the doctor was supposed to know everything. And I didn't buy into that, but that was like, this all-knowing, all-knowledgeable person. And in the medical school I went to, Albany Med, we had a couple of professors who tried to beat that idea down and tell us that, ladies and gentlemen, there are books for that stuff, and you have to work as a team in taking care of patients, because they could foresee down the road how there was going to be this information explosion. And I think with that attitude that they gave us, that helped me, for a long time, has helped me all the way down the road. But there are doctors out there that if, like, for example, you called some physicians and said, I'm a speech pathologist, I'm working with Kayla, working with a client, I'm just giving you an opinion, but maybe we should do this. You might thought about. You have to kind of tiptoe around it and be very diplomatic. With some physicians, to me, I'd be like, please tell me, what else do we need? Tell me the paperwork. Tell me the paperwork I got to fill out, Kay.
No, it's true. And I worked at a couple hospitals, and at Brooklyn Hospital, and they did come to see what I do. The pediatricians came into my room and sat and observed a session, and we talked a lot. So that was nice to get them young and be able to say, hey, this is, when in doubt, check it out. You have, and one doctor said, I was waiting and seeing, and I'm like, don't wait and see anymore. Just make the referral. All we can say is they're doing fine. But, so it's really, the relationships are getting better for sure.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. Keep it going, Kay. Doing great.
Why is it so important to keep in touch with specialists?
Well, I think, one, you want to know what's going on with the patient. You want to make sure you're staying on top of that situation. But two, the specialist can, again, just like we were just saying, can teach me a lot about, what's going on and what we need to do. And we get what are called consultation letters. So, if you visit your neurologist, is your neurologist still Dr. DeMario? Was it? Yeah, it's Dr. DeMario, Fran. That man will never retire. I tease him all the time when I talk to him. He says he's not retiring. Although there was a rumor out a couple of years ago that he was. He's like, no, that's not true, Tom. So anyway, long story short, when Fran sends me a consultation, I'm reading it, because in his consultation, he's telling me about you as a patient, but also he's teaching me. And I really take those consultation letters very, very, as very important. Because if I don't know a certain thing that he's talking about, I'll look it up. But we're lucky, and this is why I'm saying things are getting better. I can go to an app or to a website called Up to Date. Now, Up to Date is a medical website where they look at certain areas every 6 months. They look at the literature and they update it. So what I would do is, if Dr. DeMario said something in there that I didn't quite understand, I'd go to Up to Date. I might even call him up, but I would also go to Up to Date. So that's why I'm saying things are getting much better. But that's why you have to stay in touch with your specialists. Very, very important. Very, very, very important. So like, for example, Kay, if you were in the office and your mom said, oh, we went and saw Dr. DeMario a month ago, and I look in the chart and I'm like, well, I don't have that consultation, I would tell my nurse to call Dr. DeMario's office, get that note so I can look at it. Not right then and there, but I would read it later. So that's all consuming, but that's my job. That's what I signed on for, right? Who's that behind the door? Is that Daddy? Hey, how are you? How are you? Oh, Mom too. Mom's there too.
So hard because she didn't tell us who she was interviewing.
Oh, it's me, Dr. Ward, with no mustache.
Nikki recognized the voice from the picture.
Yeah, the voice. Yeah, loudmouth is what I. That's right.
That's amazing. Yeah, she did. She didn't. She goes, I didn't tell my family, right?
Good night, guys. Good to see you guys.
I said, what, you didn't tell your family?
I love it, Kay. I love it.
That's great.
Oh, terrific.
You tricked them. Sneaky girl.
She's got a great laugh.
Doesn't she amaze you how far she's come?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that belly laugh.
I remember having a huge file before they transitioned to computers.
Yeah.
That must have been fun inputting the information.
Well, I think yours was like that, and sometimes we had two. I mean, but there are plenty of patients that were like that. But there's something to be said about the way paper charts were, but it's all on computer now. I mean, you could organize it differently and kind of look at things a lot quicker. And then you weren't, of course, dependent on the internet working and the software working and all that kind of stuff. But when we had big charts like that didn't bother me. It's just that it was a good sized chart, so we had to make sure we had them both. But we would separate them out. We would kind of create them so that we had the most recent, consultations in the one chart. But if we need to go to an older consultation, we'd pull out the second chart. I mean, all kinds of things like that. Yeah. That's the name of the game. Okay.
For some reason, I can tell you where I have pain, but have a hard time explaining pain. Do you know the reason for that? I found you to be a physician who always thinks out of the box.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think, when you asked me about why you couldn't explain the pain, I think as you grew, your communication skills got better. So then you, again, started paying attention again more towards your body as you are now, so you can express it better, and that to me is why possibly that was the case. But again, like I said to you before, I'm always worried about my patient being a child, that they still have questions that I may not have answered. I mean, I may have answered mom or dad's questions, but I always go back before I leave, and make sure the patient has all of his or her questions answered, and I always say to the kids, this, Kay, I always say to kids, don't be afraid to open your mouth. Nothing is I would say nothing is a dumb question, right? And I love talking to the kids. I love talking to the kids because they always have a question that's like amazing.
In 2017, you sent me for an ultrasound for stomach pain to rule out any medical complications. Results were normal. This is a good example of me not being able to explain pain.
So did that resolve on its own, that pain? Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's, that's always in any patient, there's always in any pediatric patient, we always worry that are we understanding what the patient is expressing? It doesn't matter, what their underlying, state is. It's tough. You have to understand what is the child concerned about. Now, that's actually goes to a point where our internal medicine, meaning our adult colleagues, the people who we go on to in the adult world, that's one of the things that they always say why they didn't become a pediatrician, because they equate pediatricians were a lot like veterinarians, meaning like these kids can't talk to us. So how do you figure it out? And it worries them, the people who went into internal medicine, it worries them that they can't communicate with the patient. They want a really good communicating patient. So that's why a lot of them didn't go into pediatrics, because it's so much, to me, I love it. I love it. I take it as a challenge, but I also enjoy talking to the kids, at the various stages of the development and watching them develop, watching them grow. So to me, that's the jewel, that's the diamond in the rough of pediatrics. So, but again, my internal medicine colleagues, that was one of the things they would say, and they still say, how can you guys do this? How can you guys talk to these kids? I don't get it. I don't get it. And don't you worry about missing things? And everybody has their certain comfort level. So it's very, very interesting how, like I said, some people go into pediatrics, some people go into adult medicine. And to me, like a specialist like Dr. DeMario, he's a neurologist. And I remember a pediatric cardiologist when I was in North Carolina. We had consultants from Duke University, which is in Durham, North Carolina. And we had one of the smartest cardiologists I ever met, her from Duke. And she would come to our Air Force base, and we had a cardiology clinic. And she used to, and I respected her because she was so smart. And she said to me, when I told her that, she said, Tom, I can't believe you do what you do, because you're a general pediatrician and you have to know everything. That's what she said. And I said, Betty, though, her name was Betty Armstrong. I said, Betty, but you have to know everything about that heart. She goes, oh, that's easier than what you do. So everybody is different. Everybody's different in their comfort level. And the lady was brilliant. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant. But everybody's comfortable in their specialty area. So to me, a pediatric subspecialist, which is like Dr. DeMario, they're amazing to me. They're amazing to me what they do. So like I said, it's a comfort level, okay?
Yeah, I think, it's a really good point. I mean, I'm a communication specialist, so I have to, figure out what children are saying or what they're communicating, what the behavior is, why are they doing that behavior? And, communication is raw, it's complicated, it's difficult, and so as adults, we have a hard time communicating with other adults,
Right. Yep.
But, what I love about what you said is that, and I love that when we were talking, how Kayla would tell me, well, you talk to her like she was there, a person, not her parents, like not talking to her parents, but to her about her needs.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of doctors don't do, and and also with Kayla today, when I anticipate, if I didn't understand her or she was telling me something and I just explained what I thought I heard, she communicates to me, no, that's not what I was
love it. Yeah, I love it.
She yells at me. She's like, no, that's not what I was saying. But
I love that.
I always give.
I love that.
Yeah. She's like, nope, that's not what I was saying. And I'm like, okay, well, that's communication right there. And with any kid, you can anticipate what they're saying and say it for them, but they're going to tell you, no, I was not saying that. And if they can't say that, they're going to have a behavior that tells you, otherwise. So this, it was really great to hear why you went into pediatrics, why, you chose pediatrics versus an internal medicine person. Right. That's clear.
Yeah, in my training, so in medical school, you have to go through all the disciplines. And I knew early on, not early on, but it was our third year is really, in the old days, it used to be where you started your clinical rotations and your fourth year as well. And I did the neonatal intensive care unit, and I loved it because it was the babies and we were doing a lot of science, technology stuff. And then following that, I had a rotation in internal medicine, meaning adult medicine. Oh, I was not happy. So I always felt like the pediatricians were always happier than the internists. So I was like, no, this is where I want to be. And I attribute the pediatricians being happy because they're taking care of kids. They're taking care of kids who we always felt had so much potential and we can make a big difference. And that's really why I love pediatrics.
Me as well.
Yeah.
What do you want other medical professionals to know about CP?
Well, I think, and I think we've kind of touched on a couple of different ways, but that, there's a brain in that body, and there's a thinking person in there who has emotions and has understanding, and you need to listen to them and communicate with them. I always felt, to be honest with you, Kay, bad that I did not learn sign language. Okay. I did not learn. I could not, not that I couldn't, I just was consumed by everything else. I couldn't take the time to do that. So I felt like, geez, I can't communicate, but with your mom, and then you and I kind of were able to communicate in a lot of different ways. We could understand each other. But to me, that's what I think internists, that's what I think a lot of specialists need to understand, is that, you're a human being, you have an opinion, which I know you do, and you have your thinking and you have emotions. And so we have to figure out how to talk to that person and communicate, I should say, with that person. And that's what I would say that's what I'd say to the other doctors of in medicine, and not just doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, anybody in a hospital, so I think you'll see various people comfortable with different things like anything else in life. But I think that's what we have to educate. And what was really interesting is, like I said at the beginning of this interview, I was telling some folks of mine that I was going to be doing this interview, which again, I was very humbled that you asked me to do this. And they were like, oh, can I see it, Tom? Can I see it? So there's the interest out there. So I think you're really providing a good service, Kay. It really is. It's really a very, very good service. We just got to get more people to listen and watch, right? Yeah. Yeah. And that's how we educate.
You can send all our segments and you can share them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Kayla have the same type of CP. We're very different. Kayla and I actually have the same type of CP, but we're very different.
Right.
Like I'm ambulatory. I actually have 2 children. I had them vaginally. They do not recommend it.
Right.
But I did. I have major hip problems now because of it. But
okay.
We do actually have the same type of CP. So it's interesting to see 2 people with the same diagnosis so different.
Right.
Yeah. This was just a one interview thing that turned into a huge, we're making it into something so much bigger because we realized the need was so vast. So we're looking forward to, more, and for you to share with your patients and to spread the word, for sure.
Now, what was your first interview? Was it the one before this? Was that the first interview?
No, a year ago. Because, during pandemic, I'm in private practice. I'm like, let me work on, spreading more awareness while I can without, patient contact. And so it was, Kayla and I have been in touch for years on Facebook, and I'm like, hey, can I interview you for Cerebral Palsy Month?
Right.
And we did an interview together, and we hadn't seen each other because I left Bristol when she was 5.
Oh, wow.
And we reconnected. And I've always been in touch with Mom and Dad. And so that's how it all started. And then Katrina saw our interview and she was like, hey, what's amazing. So then I invited Katrina for an interview. Right. And then we said, let's do a show.
Right. No, I think it's a great idea.
The first show was when I got my license in my 40s, right?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Yep. And Katrina and we skied together. She, I didn't know anybody with cerebral palsy except Katrina, who was my friend since elementary school.
Yep.
And now I treat them. But again, like you said, I've only seen like 5 cerebral palsy patients, myself included, you know? So it's a really good thing. I
think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's great. Educational. Yeah. And I want to know, do you post the schedule? Like, for example, that researcher that you're doing, Kay, are you going to be posting a schedule on your Facebook page? Yes? Okay. I'm not a big Facebook person, but I guess I'll have to be for you.
Yeah, we have LinkedIn. We're working on those. Yeah. Kayla's, she's the Instagram, Facebook. I'm like, this
Instagram too, Kay? You have Instagram, Kay?
Yeah, so she's...
Well, yeah. I have Instagram, so I'll have to look up Kayla Ireland. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
you are a computer wizard.
She is.
Yeah, she takes care of all of that for us because we work full time.
Yeah.
And that's Kayla's full-time job, and she does a great job, so we enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Wednesday is Dr. Paulo Selber, an orthopedic surgeon who has dedicated his entire career to cerebral palsy. So you'll have to watch that one.
Wednesday. Well, but it'll be recorded, or is it already done?
No,
we'll record it.
We post it like that night that it's done.
So this will be posted tonight?
Yeah.
What, tomorrow night? Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Okay. So go ahead.
We'll send it to you too. We can send it on email, so you can do, and to the Pro Health, so that they you know all of that.
No, I think that's a good idea. I could probably send it to there's like an email list for pediatricians, so I can do that. Maybe I should just send it out to all doctors, but I'll start out with the pediatricians first.
That would help.
Because it'd be very helpful. Yes.
And we have a YouTube channel too, so we're working on that.
Is the YouTube channel active yet, or? No. Yes. All right. Well, send me all those links, whatever it is. You make me laugh, Kay. You're like, oh, come on, Doc. I love it, Kay.
It is my way of communication.
Yeah.
So she's good at it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. Just the way you said that, Kay, it made the face. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, Dr. Ward. But no, I want to know more about it. So, and I want to use the channel. So all you have to do is send me all those links that you're talking about. And then, and I'll get it going for you.
What do you think of the release of CDC new developmental milestones, which pushes back all development?
I mean, I remember when that came out. I remember when that came out, Kay. And when you said that on my list, I pulled them up again, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. And I guess I didn't think much about it But when you made that point, I thought, well, maybe there's a little bit of the developmental, pushing the developmental milestones back a bit. But I think that came out, did that come out pre-COVID or COVID? Do you remember when it came out, Kay?
No.
Now, COVID.
Now, it just came out?
Yeah.
Really? Because I have it right here. And I thought, I'll show you. I have it right here. Yeah. And I thought, geez. So you brought this to my attention, but I thought they brought this out earlier. But I looked at it and I said, well, it looks okay. I mean, I'm a great believer in early intervention, okay? Early intervention, okay? So I find this helpful, but I think the biggest hurdle we have, Kay, this is the biggest hurdle, is to try to convince a parent or a mom that they need to at least go, like we have the program in the state of Connecticut called Birth to 3. We need to call Birth to 3. And there's so much resistance sometimes from families. And, I would rather get them in earlier rather than later. And of course, Birth to 3 is not really birth to 3. It's birth to age 2.5 because of the funding of it all. And I say that to families, and what I usually do, if I have a child who has developmental delay at 15 or 18 months, I want them to get in then. If the family says they're not going to do that, for whatever reason, let's wait a little while, Dr. Ward. What I'll do is I'll bring them back sooner than their next checkup, and we'll see how the development, and then I'll see if I can then convince them again to do birth to 3. If I can't get them to do birth to 3, I'll try to get them in to see CCMC. Now, the problem with CCMC and their pediatric development department, pediatric development, is they are overwhelmed. They did have a lot of openings for a while there because they got a bunch of new doctors. And now I just referred a patient last week and they said they're back to like a year waiting list, 1 year waiting list. Yale is no better. Yeah. So, that's where we are. So that's why I believe birth to 3 is such a good way to get them into the system. And again, the hardest thing is to convince the family that we need to get early intervention. It really is.
I am seeing a lot from COVID. I'm getting a lot of calls about because of the masks the children have lost so much from like wearing a mask. You learn so much from lip reading, from looking at facial expressions, and and I'm the same way. I mean, I'm getting into the pediatricians and saying, when in doubt, check it out, do birth to 3. And, I get a lot of parents that say, well, when, is you going to fix my child, or when are they going to be developmentally appropriate? And I always say, they want a number. And I always say, like, whatever number I get them at. So if I get them at 1 year, it might take 1 year. If I get them at 3 years, it's going to take me 3 years. I'm very, I give them a longer term number because 3 years is 3 habits, 3 years of habits that you have to change. So, it is hard sometimes to convince parents, but once you do, it is worth it for sure.
Well, I mean, early intervention makes a big difference. I mean, we see it already, we see it in autism, I know we're talking about cerebral palsy, but autism, when I grew up, a lot of these kids, even the kids with CP, with cerebral palsy, they were put in mental institutions, asylums. We housed them, and what was I going to say? Now we know early intervention for autism makes such a big difference. So these kids are blossoming, but I think the stigma, whatever it is sometimes what these families are dealing with. They had a relative or somebody else. And that's why, to me, the sales job, meaning like to try to convince them that we need to go this route and start with birth to 3 or whatever it is so hard and crucial to do. Yeah. And that's why I think this kind of forum is very, very important for cerebral palsy. It really is. Yeah.
And we've been really pushing, it's not a disability, it's actually like a superpower. These areas that need improvement actually end up being their power, their superpower in the end. So, in any disability, it's like, disability, we're now,
So let me tell you about, I have a nephew. Again, I'm the oldest of 6. My youngest brother had his 4th child who has what are called Dandy Walker cysts, and he has a partial corpus callosum. So he has a major league disability. And he was told, my brother was told, and that, this child will never walk, this child will never talk, this child will never communicate. Well, in New York, they have like a birth to 3, but I think it's even more intensive than our program is. And my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, is amazing. She will do whatever the specialists tell them to do. And now Spencer, can walk with a walker, although he doesn't want to walk with a walker. He wants to just walk without a walker. And he does a lot of signing. But he also has, what I think is amazing, is he has an amazing sense of humor. He's always trying to play tricks on everybody. Always. And so to me, that's intelligence. That's intelligence. Like, oh my God. And the thing that the thing that really, again, it was my brother and his wife's household. They treated him like the other three, and the other three treated him. They dragged Spencer all over the place. So he like just accommodated and became an amazing kid. You know, he still had special needs, huge special needs, but it's amazing. This kid who was told he would do nothing, and when he sees his neurologist, like Dr. DeMario, they see a neurologist at Northern Westchester County, I think it is. She cries every time she sees him, because she remembers what was said. She cries every time. She says, "This kid is amazing," and that's the attitude I've always had in pediatrics. Kids have such a potential that we have to give them every opportunity to make the grade, make the developmental milestone, see what we can do, accommodate, whatever it is. And my nephew Spencer is amazing. We always say that Spencer's amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can. And I always say that. It's so funny. You cannot teach humor. You can't.
No.
You can't teach humor or a sense of humor. That's just, you can't. So that's intelligence, you know.
Yeah. And he's always pulling pranks on us. Always.
You can't teach that. You can't teach that. Always, yeah.
I love it, Kay.
No, and the other thing is, you know, I always say to the parents too, you know, they could tell you they're never going to be able to do this, they're never going to be able to do that, but it's all about changing the mindset.
Yep, absolutely.
And disproving, you know, every child I know disproves the diagnosis. So.
And to just give you another little bit more, they lived in a small house in a small cape, and even my parents would always say there is more love in that house than in any other house we've ever been to, and there is. And we said that it's that love that carried Spencer through, and we always say that there's so much love in this house. It's unbelievable. And they're like, you know, they all were, I think they had bunk beds, you know, like there's like barely have bedrooms, you know, they have one bathroom and 4 kids and 2 dogs, and, you know, it's just like crazy, but this kid has made it, you know? So that's a great example, I think. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because he amazes us all the time. Like you, Kay, like you. Oh, yeah.
What advice do you offer parents who have kids diagnosed with CP at this time?
Well, like I said, you know, you have to give them every opportunity and every chance, and I try to get them connected with a good neurologist, a good rehabilitation. We're lucky that we have some good rehab facilities around, you know, specialists. I sent them to the pediatric developmental group at Children's. So I want to get them connected right away. I don't want them to sit and do nothing, you know, because I think again, it's an education process for the family, and they can see the potential of their child. And that this, like you were saying, there's so many different kinds of CP. I should say not cerebral palsy. There's so many different way people develop with cerebral palsy that you know, I think you have to give them every opportunity.
Yeah, my mom was told I'd never walk or talk, and I have 2 children. I draw, you know, I lead a pretty normal life.
Yeah.
These 2 families, Katrina and Kayla's, same thing. So much love and support and happiness.
Oh yeah.
You know? So I feel
it goes a long way. It goes a long way.
It really does.
I have 6 sisters, and when you told me that your nephew was dragged around, ask Marcy. That was me.
Really?
I was dragged everywhere. And I'm like,
literally dragged. They would drag him everywhere he went. Yeah, come on, Spencer. Yeah, I know. It was hysterical.
And they still do it. As old as I am, my sisters are still like.
I love it.
Right.
I do love it. Yeah.
Weren't you on the board for another professional association of therapeutic horsemanship center? Dr. Ward, can you please give us a little insight on why you think programs like this are so important?
Well, I know that with therapeutic riding, it does help. From what I understand, and my understanding from the standpoint of the horse, is that the horse and the person connect. And it allows for that person who may have some inability to walk comfortably or do whatever they want to do that with the horse. So and I've been told that the movement of the horse also helps the person and the condition. So I was recruited because I always felt that Therapeutic Riding Center on Hill Street was a real gem. It was really important to have, and that we have a lot of people with a lot of different disabilities or abilities that they could, improve with the horse therapy. So from my understanding, it helps physical therapy, occupational therapy, it helps development, psychological, definitely, mental health, across the board. So I got on a horse. I don't know if it helped Dr. Ward, but they wanted me on the horse. It was interesting. I liked it, but it was just amazing to watch especially the kids ride the horses, because they're just so comfortable after a while. And the horse knows them and vice versa. And it's just amazing synergy. Yeah, it's an amazing synergy. Yeah. So.
Thank you for signing my therapeutic riding forms for 17 years. It has been and still is the most beneficial, rewarding, and adventurous activity I participate in.
And what do you get out of it, Kay? What do you get out of it? Everything. Yeah.
We learned a lot about the riding and dressage, all these terms that I never and it helps speech. We talk about how it helps speech too, because it builds intraoral pressure and core strength, because we speak upon exhalation, and if they don't have those muscles, right, Kayla, to develop. I mean, your voice has gotten so much stronger over the years.
Really? Wow.
She projects so well. And when when you make a sentence, I can understand. When you were little, you didn't have that intraoral pressure to build for those P and B's and M's to close your mouth and produce. So, that horseback riding helps that too.
That's great.
Even grabbing blue clues.
Oh, it helped you grab Blue's Clues. Yeah. The coordination. Yeah.
Really? Really? Wow. That's good to see.
I was standing.
Oh.
It allows you to stand, or has taught you to stand. Oh. Oh, okay.
Got it. All right, Kay. Well, we're gonna start to wrap it up. So thank you so much for taking the time.
It was an absolute honor and privilege to have you on our show. I still remember you saying at our last appointment on August 11th, 2020, something like, okay, I didn't know that you could cry. I wrote out not really paying attention. Please come back next year. Please refer your patients to the Inside Scoop of Living with CP.
Okay. Like I said, Kay, send me those addresses so that I can send them out. You are the technical wizard that I am not. And I'll send it out. Okay, Kay?
We might be able to help some of your younger patients too that are trying to navigate because their parents just don't know.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah, yep. Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you too, another Bristol person. So.
Okay. All right. Nice meeting you.
So much.
Good night now.
Good night.
Bye-bye.